Robyn Flynn filling in for Elias Makos all this week. If you're anything like me, the second you pop out a kid, your social media feed suddenly changes. I feel like the moment I was pregnant, it was all ads for diapers and schools and baby clothes. Then once my daughter was born, all of a sudden my For You page on TikTok and my feed on Instagram were just littered with momfluencers. But what exactly is a momfluencer? Sara Petersen is author of the book Momfluenced, Inside the Maddening, Picture-Perfect World of Mommy Influencer Culture. And she joins us now. Hi, Sara. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Very good. So first of all, let's just explain, what is a momfluencer?
Yeah, so a momfluencer, the simplest definition I usually give folks is somebody who has utilized their identity as a mother on a social media platform in order to make money in some sort of way. That said, I think if we expand the category, we can look at any mother with any type of influence, regardless of whether or not her account is monetized, as, you know, also sort of a mini momfluencer.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense because even with regular influencers, there are different tiers of influencers, right? Someone with 10,000 followers isn't going to have quite the same influence as Kim Kardashian, for example, right?
Totally. Yes, totally.
Now, something to keep in mind is a lot of these moms, so I follow some I don't, but there are some that I quite enjoy their takes. They have great advice. I have a toddler, so I'm always looking for parenting advice. But something to keep in mind is a lot of these moms are showing us a very selective, curated, brief moment in their lives, right? We don't see the housekeepers or the nannies in the background helping them to make their houses look absolutely perfect. And it can be so hard not to compare ourselves to other people on social media. Is this something that you see as well, that people just feel inadequate when they follow this kind of content?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, you know, everybody's mileage will vary, but if you are only following these super aesthetic, super idealized, very, you know, femme imagistic heavy accounts, you might end up feeling not so great. And I always tell people to sort of check in after, you know, they spend some time scrolling, because there are some momfluencers who really deliver a lot of benefits. You know, you were talking about parenting momfluencers. There's also momfluencers who can talk about, you know, the challenges, the specific challenges inherent to raising a neurodivergent child, for example, or momfluencers who maybe can speak to infertility struggles. So I do think, you know, being self-reflective about what you're looking for in your consumption and what you're, you know, maybe not needing in your life right now is really helpful.
Absolutely. I found, so my husband and I had fertility challenges to conceive my daughter. We had to do IVF. It was a whole thing. It took years. And I found an amazing community online of other women going through these kinds of things, because it's very hard to talk to your friends when they are not being forced to, you know, give themselves injections 3 times a day like you are when you're going through IVF. So that community was tremendous to me and very supportive. But, you know, I did have a couple videos on TikTok that went viral, got a few million views. Next thing you know, you have 40,000 followers, and all of a sudden it can become kind of scary, right? You have all these comments and DMs and people reaching out to you. And I think a lot of people think that everyone who's an influencer gets mega rich, but I'm Canadian. We don't have access to the Creator Fund in TikTok. So I've gotten $0 from my content on TikTok. So, you know, I think that's something to keep in mind as well, is people aren't necessarily doing this for monetary gain, right?
Yeah, I mean, really only, I kind of like to compare it to multi-level marketing pay structures, in that, you know, the select few momfluencers at the very, very tippy top with, you know, 1 million followers and huge accounts with Amazon or other big brands, they are making quite a bit of money, but the vast majority of momfluencers, you know, maybe they get $200 for, you know, a Tide-sponsored Instagram story, for example. It's certainly not, for most of them, it's not enough to live on, for sure.
Definitely. In conversation with Sara Petersen, she's author of the book Momfluenced. I am somewhat concerned, and I'm very mindful of the content that I post about my daughter. I try very much to not post a lot of content, but I get very uncomfortable when I see videos of, toddlers in the middle of having temper tantrums, or toddlers during bath time in particular is another one. And when you're like a mega influencer who makes a ton of money, one of those tippy top ones at the top, this is a business, and it kind of makes your kids your employees. And I feel like now we're starting to hear from those kids who grew up with like that original YouTube family vlogger family style. They're adults now, and they're saying, you know what? This was not an ideal way to grow up. I had a very difficult relationship with my parents, and we just don't even talk anymore. So at the end of the day, is it really worth it?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many privacy concerns and also just child labor. I think because social media is still such a relatively new, phenomena, that many of us don't view it as labor, social media performing as labor, but it absolutely is. And these children are many times doing unpaid labor. So there's a recent push to, streamline and, put regulations in place to protect these kids. Maybe that means, a certain amount of income has to go into a college fund. But yeah, there is certainly, not only the concern about money, but how meaningfully can a 4-year-old, for example, consent to their likeness being, splashed across an Instagram account with 100,000 followers, right?
Yep. Speaking of exploitation, I know some kids, some moms, maybe they're not intentionally putting their kids in harm's way. They may not know any better. But there are some, it feels like they're very intentionally doing this. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ren and Jacqueline account on TikTok.
I'm not, no.
Okay, so Ren is this little girl. Her mom, Jacqueline, has been posting her on TikTok since she was a year old, basically. And she's a really cute little girl, blonde, blue eyes, just, your typical all-American little girl. But her mom has started posting what people say are questionable content. So it's a lot of videos of Ren eating things in an inappropriate way. Think hot dogs, bananas.
Right.
And people are reaching out to her saying people are using this for nefarious things. And personally, if somebody pointed that out to me and I didn't realize what I was doing, I would be horrified. I would take that content down immediately and I would never post anything like that again. But instead, Jacqueline, the mom, has sort of doubled down, being like, you guys are gross, get your minds out of the gutter. But, these videos have millions and millions of views and saves. And if you look at the people liking the videos, it's a lot of older men. And it's just, it breaks my heart because this little girl now, I think she's only 4. And, like you said, can she truly consent to something like this? I feel like we almost need a law to protect little girls like that.
Totally. I mean, I compare it to, we do have child labor laws for, child actors, but even that, I do think the issue of consent is really something worth further consideration because, say a 4-year-old is signing on to a 3-movie deal that involves touring across the world and doing huge public appearances. Again, how can that 4-year-old really understand what that will entail and how that will shape her identity? So, yeah, I hope moving forward to see more regulations around this type of thing.
Sara Petersen is author of the book Momfluenced, Inside the Maddening, Picture-Perfect World of Mommy Influencer Culture. Sara, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.